it's Valerie of Valerie's and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about the books I read in both March and April. So first up, I read the upcoming release Boundless by Gillian Tamaki. This is being released by Drawn and Quarterly May 30th, so check that out when it comes out. This is quite different from Gillian Tamaki's earlier work. She has written it herself, drawn it herself, and they are actually short stories. They are quite whimsical and surreal and strange, but there's a sort of slice of life quality to all of them. I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 out of 5, but I will be talking about this and Gillian Tamaki's other works in an upcoming spotlight video, so keep an eye out for that one and keep an eye out for this when it is released later this month. After that, I read Mildred Pierce by James M. Cain. I was just sort of in the mood for a semi-pulpy modern classic, and this really hit the spot for me. If you don't know what Mildred Pierce is about, it is about a divorced mother in the Depression era, and she is just working really hard to support herself and her children, but her main motivation is to bring joy to her daughter Vera, who is an absolute brat and she's awful, and you wonder why Mildred is so in love with her when her daughter just the most evil little girl ever, and she grows up to be an awful young woman as well. But you're rooting for Mildred the entire time because she really does thrive and do well for herself and her children, but you kind of question her motivations and you hate her a little bit because she's working so hard to please this awful daughter of hers. And I really enjoyed this. I gave it a 4 out of 5, maybe not the strongest 4, but I enjoyed it as I was reading it and I liked the characters and the drama, and yeah, it was a solid book. After that, I read Human Acts by Han Kang. This was very heavy. This is actually based around actual events. It is based on the Gwangju student uprising that happened in 1980 in South Korea. This was an event that I knew absolutely nothing about, and when I first started reading it, I wasn't sure if it was a fictionalized event, but it was very much real and very much affected a lot of innocent people, and many young lives were lost, unfortunately, and this was so harrowing to read. I can't necessarily say that I enjoyed this book or enjoyed reading it, but it really just cut deep. This was definitely a difficult book to read, and the way it's even told sort of reminded me of Homegoing by Ya Jessie, how it starts off with one character and then the next chapter will follow a different character a few years down the line, and actually the final chapter is an epilogue told from the perspective of Han Kang herself, and she writes about why she wrote this book and why she chose certain characters, and that was a chapter that absolutely broke me and really redeemed this novel for me as well, because up until that point I was sort of confused and disoriented by the way the story was told, but that epilogue really brought it all together and broke my heart even more. So definitely check this out. It's nothing like The Vegetarian, but it is very well written and very powerful. It's just not an easy one to read. So if you struggle to read about war and just gruesome, bloody details, maybe skip out on this one, but I definitely think it's an important thing to read. Next up, another extremely tragic novel. This is Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. This is my first Thomas Hardy and I absolutely loved it. I found this super compelling. I know a lot of people complain about Hardy's writing and how he's too descriptive and wordy and things are just dragged out and slow, but I really didn't have any complaints or issues with it. I flew through it. There was even a point where I was reading hundreds of pages a day because I just wanted to know what happened to Tess. If you don't know what this is about Tess Durbeyfield, whose father learned that they are descendants of a royal-ish family, the D'Urbervilles, and they're a poor farming family, so when something tragic happened to them and Tess sort of feels at fault for it, she takes it upon herself to go meet one of the only living D'Urbervilles left, and the person that she meets is possibly one of the biggest assholes in literature, and I will leave it at that. I found this book so devastating that I actually marked each time that something absolutely earth-shattering happened in this book, so look forward to that if you decide to pick this up. I really enjoyed it. I was super mad at the end. I was super mad at everything, but I still love this book and I can't wait to read more Thomas Hardy. After that, I read Foxlow by Eleanor Vosserberg. I don't have much to say about this book other than that I was pretty disappointed in it and found it pretty underwhelming as well. This is about a cult or a commune, and it is told from the perspective of someone who is looking back on their time in the cult, and it's implied that they have escaped from this cult or this cult has disbanded, and I don't know, man. I just found the writing wasn't super great. It was that sort of sparse storytelling that reminded me of Room by Emma Donoghue, but I just don't really feel like it worked for this book. Also, the big climax or the big twist was sort of left out until the very end, so rather than finding it compelling me to read to the end, I felt like the author was just holding back just to keep you reading. It didn't benefit the plot or the reading experience at all, and I felt like it was sort of cheap to do that, to leave the big twist till the very, very, very end. Which is why I gave it a weak 3 out of 5. I didn't hate this book and I did enjoy it as I was reading it, but the writing style left a little to be desired. After that, I read The Hours by Michael Cunningham. I really, really enjoyed this, and this was a really interesting book to read. If you don't know what it's about, it essentially is based off of Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, and it follows 3 women. So the first being Virginia Woolf as she's writing Mrs. Dalloway, the second being a woman who is nicknamed Mrs. Dalloway and she is living in modern day New York, or at this time New York in the 1990s, and then the third woman is a housewife in the 1940s who is reading Mrs. Dalloway, and just that premise alone was enough to intrigue me. If you're on the fence about reading this, I definitely recommend that you do because it is so brilliantly written. There were passages that I just wanted to highlight and tattoo on my body because they were so sumptuous and gorgeous, and there were a lot of really clever turns of phrase that I picked up on as well, and there's a lot of symbolism and a lot of talk about death and suicide and longing and unrequited love, and I just... Ooh, this one was really sad as well. I've read a lot of sad books in the past month. This was so, so beautiful and so touching. I read it quite quickly. I just read it in under 2 days, and I feel like I could revisit it again pretty soon because it was just such a whirlwind of emotions and beautiful writing. So I gave it a 4 out of 5, and I'm really, really glad that I finally picked it up. And as a treat for staying till the end of all my reviews, I have a mini book haul for you. I went out with my friend Erin from The Bibliotherapist. I cannot do a video without mentioning her, but her and I went out on the weekend because it was Independent Bookstore Day, so I showed her one of my favorite used bookstores and I picked some stuff up, and they all happened to be Penguin classics, so that's pretty cool. So first off, I picked up Consider Her Ways by John Wyndham. This is just a short story collection by John Wyndham, obviously. He writes science fiction. He's great. I absolutely love him. I've never read any of his short story collections, but I collect these little editions by him, so when I saw it in the store, I grabbed it. Then I picked up Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. I've never seen this little edition before, but I was excited to find it because I wanted to read just Metamorphosis and not a collection of Kafka's stories, so this is cool. And I started this yesterday. I've read only maybe 30 pages so far, and it's pretty interesting. It's pretty standard. Guy turns into a bug. Pretty cool. And finally, I was so excited to find Far from the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy. I could not have found this at a better time, and it is an edition that matches my copy of Tess of the D'Urbervilles, and it is a Penguin English Library edition that has a rubbery, satiny finish, so I'm really excited about that. I don't think I'll read this right away since I am just getting over Tess. I mean, I don't think I'll ever get over Tess, but I don't think I'm ready for this one yet, but I'm just so stoked that I got matching editions now. And that was it for my March-April wrap-up haul thing. Let me know if you've read any of those books or if you're interested in reading any of them, and let me know what you've been reading as well. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye!